we can come back and examine that. But right now, and rightly so, the focus is on taking advantage of the carte blanche the American public has given him to go and do it right. And he talked about it as an obligation not only to ourselves now, but to generations to come. I think he has seen exactly what he has to do with the full vision that was necessary. And this president, I think, is taking full advantage and using his full authority to do what he recognizes is probably his most important single task of his presidency.
John Sununu last night. 7:14 with Don, Wade, and Roma. Good morning. Today's meeting of Islamic clerics in Afghanistan has ended without any agreements. An Afghan official says the meeting will resume tomorrow. The reason that this is important is that these some 600 top clerics were meeting. The Taliban was considering turning over Osama bin Laden. That was the one point. The second point was whether or not to declare a jihad against the United States if the U.S. attacks Afghanistan. Those are the two things that they were considering, and apparently they have ended their meeting today without any agreements. Now, they're ahead of us, so the meeting to resume tomorrow is not that far away. But they were anticipating a possible decision in both of those issues, whether or not to expel Osama bin Laden and under what conditions.
Obviously, they're not coming to an easy agreement. Obviously.
And we may get to talk to Bob Woodruff, who's over there in Islamabad at some time this morning. We look forward to that. We're trying to hook that up. Some other things that are happening. I wanted to mention quickly before we go, can we mention the hyphen dropping suggestion?
Yeah.
Yeah. John Kass writes a column about that.
Yes, he does. Today he writes a column saying there have been many ideas offered on how Americans should react to this tragedy. Some promote blood drives, singing patriotic songs, sending the federal tax refund check to charity. These are all great ideas. But there is one way that Americans truly can respect and honor the thousands killed in the attacks in New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania. It will help us gather together as one nation to get ready for what must be done without demonizing any group or giving in to fear-mongering. How can we do this? John Kass says we can drop the hyphens, as in hyphenated America.
Right.
This idea doesn't come just from a former Greek American, but from a former Italian American, a former Latin American. We can minimize the ethnic divisions and stop the easy balkanization of America by dropping the hyphens.
Yeah.
And in so doing, we state we are Americans, not victims or separate warring tribes put in the political pit to fight over political scraps. It's an interesting column, because, especially for Chicagoans, because we are such an ethnic city. We are certainly the melting pot of this nation, the heart of this nation. And slicing the pie based on ethnicity is, he says, the corrupt way of local big city political bosses to slice us up and keep us divided one from another.
Sure. Understand that the best way to conquer is to divide. That's what you often hear that, divide and conquer. If you can divide Americans, then you can conquer America.
Well, we've received email and comments, phone calls from a lot of people recently who say things like, well, if I see one more Mexican flag flying, I am just going to have a snit fit. I'm going to rip it down, etc. You have to understand that the Mexicans who live in the USA have postponed their big parade. This is their Independence Day celebration, September 15th was.
16th.
Was it the 15th?
16th.
And they postponed that, etc. And that is why you see Mexican flags flying. It's because they were also celebrating their independence at the same time. Perhaps they should fly at half-mast with the American flag. I can't quibble over those nits, but understand where these people are coming from and what their ethnic heritage is. And then we have to ask, at what point do we put those things aside and become one title, one nation? And can we?
Wait a minute. What's Nikki going to say here in Rockford? Hey, Nikki, welcome to WLS.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning, Nikki.
Good morning. I just want to let you guys know that back in the 70s, John Wayne had an album out, and he kind of talked with music in the background, and it had a song, or whatever you want to call it, called The Hyphen. And it talks about that we shouldn't be called African American, Chinese American. We should just be called American.
Well, is this the time that this will actually become culturally significant to us?
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, thanks for calling, Nikki. Appreciate it. We'll see if anybody who's 150 years old has a copy of that John Wayne recording. It's probably on a wire recorder, or is it? It's from the 70s. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not that old.
Yeah, 8-track.
Okay.
If you're a hyphenated
8-track
American, if you considered yourself to be a hyphenated American, I'd like to hear from you about whether at this point you're feeling the same way, like putting away the hyphen.
Yeah. So Kass, for instance, says, he says, we should be proud of our ethnic roots and never forget our blood. We should remember our ancestors and be proud of our heritage. For instance, he says, I'm proudly American of Greek descent. But I'm not a Greek American. I'm an American of Greek descent. And the difference is important.
The American comes first.
Yeah. So, Janet is in Huntley. Good morning, Janet.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Janet.
There's a couple things I would like to see done, and one of them is that that we have English declared the national language. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, and I can verify this, it may be denied by the state of Illinois, and of course I know you guys have talked about some of the colleges. I think everybody should be treated equally in the United States and hired as to how you with your background in training, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work for the state of Illinois, and they had, whenever anyone was hired, they always hired ethnic people first. And if you were Caucasian, you only got the job if an ethnic person did not apply for that job.
Well, I hardly think this is the appropriate time to talk about affirmative action or things like that, because basically what we're trying to talk about...
America, and everybody should be created equally in America, and they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And you are actually it is really you are the one that's been if you're a Caucasian America, you are discriminated against.
Okay, thank you.
She just hyphenated again.
All right. Before we go to the break, I want to talk to was it Turhan?
Turhan?
Yes, good morning, folks.
Good morning, Turhan.
Wade and Roma, I enjoy your program very much.
Thank you.
I'm a hyphenated American. I'm Turkish by nationality. And my vote is resounding yes. It should be lifted. People ought to be all one together.
So you are an American of Turkish heritage?
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's fine. That's wonderful. We're all of different heritages, and that should be celebrated. We should all be...
Have you always in the past called yourself a Turkish American?
Yes, I have.
And now will you attempt to rethink that hyphen?
No. When people ask me where I'm from, I tell them I'm Turkish. I've been a little bit lucky. I've been here since 1962, and one of the first things that I had to do and did is learn the language as well as I possibly could. When I came to this country, I didn't know a word of English.
Well, you've done beautifully.
Yeah.
However, this is one of the things that we ought to do. I think we should not foster multi-languages. The America should adopt the English language. As I understand, we don't have a national language per se.
No, and we've seen the dangers of that in Canada. And
right.
The balkanization there.
This is something very important that we ought to do. And I also had an idea, folks. I don't know if I may say this. It's a little bit out of context.
Yes.
Pardon me?
Yes. Quickly.
All right. Because a wealth of businessmen flying and traveling all through this country every day, every night. And I'm wondering if it's a good idea to perhaps have the federal government think of deputizing some of these folks, and those are who are willing to take the challenge and accept the responsibility and the training.
Yeah.
And have these folks be on alert and be on guard at all times. And personally,
okay.
I'd be delighted to do that.
Thank you very much, Terran. 724 WLS Chicagoland weather.
Rain and thunderstorms today, but we'll try to be your sunshine. High of 70. Tonight, 50% chance of evening showers, low of 55. And for Thursday, partly cloudy with a high of 74.
The marine forecast, small craft advisory for this afternoon and tonight. East to southeast winds 10 to 20, becoming variable near 10 around noon. Then northwest and increasing to 20 to 25 by late afternoon. A few thunderstorms possible. Waves 2 to 4, building to 4 to 6 by late afternoon. 65 O'Hare, 69 Midway, DuPage 63, Lakefront 68. 725, Rick Federici has WLS traffic.